Hey guys, Josh Kalachi here, and of course we have these new NBA daily fantasy tools that you've seen on RotoCurve. Now you may be thinking, how do you use these? And that's exactly what this video is for. I'm going to discuss how I use each one and how I think these tools can be used best to help with your research and your lineup decisions each night in NBA daily fantasy. So let's get right into it. As you can see on this RotoCurve homepage, at the top, you see home, DFS tools, analyst articles, forums, and the learning curve. Now, as always at RotoCurve, everything in here is free, so be sure to check everything out. But if you look at the tools, scroll down, you see these three NBA tools: the DVP and matchup detector, game theory, and NBA bargain values. I'm going to discuss how to use each one. So going down in order, we'll start with the DVP and matchup detector. If you click on this link, it'll bring you to a page that shows the tool in its entirety. Now, once this loads, you can see all these numbers now, all these colors. Now, what does it all mean? First things first, you can see the basic player information, which of course has the name, the position, the team, their opponent. Now, this base DVP plus or minus shows what each player has in terms of their scoring ability for their team, things of that nature. So if you see a guy like Dirk Nowitzki who has 100 for points, that means he's normally scoring the most points for the Dallas Mavericks, and he has a high matchup for points scored. Now, if you go over here, this is total rebounds and assists. Of course, you can use this and find the green for plus minus, and it gives people good matchups in that potential statistic. So you see Blake Griffin has a little bit of a positive in points, has a positive in rebounds, and definitely has a positive in assists. So that makes him a good matchup against Dirk Nowitzki, which brings us to our next column. That's the likely defender. With Griffin going against Dirk Nowitzki, he is our highest rated player according to this matchup detector, because Nowitzki is not a very good defender. We've all known this by seeing it. Now you can see the numbers back it up. That gives him a 6.1 DVP plus minus. So that means Blake Griffin against Dirk Nowitzki has a very high matchup and is our top player on the slate, given the fact that he has the best matchup. Now, you can use other things other than just matchup, like usage rate and everything like that, and we'll get into that a little bit. Now, you may see this DVP ratings overall over here. Now, what this is, and this will be updated as the season goes on, this is the DVP ratings by position, and it's sorted towards the end by average DVP, and you can see the centers, power forwards, small forward, shooting guards, and point guards. Now, last year, Minnesota struggled against every position, and if you scroll down, teams like the Grizzlies, the Pacers, the Spurs, the Bulls, and of course the Jazz were very good against every other position. So if you can tell and look at the rest of these things, you can see that the DVP is used here in terms of the entirety, and you can use this tool to make everything a little bit easier to find for matchups. A little bit similar to our MLB splits tool or MLB matchups tool we had during baseball season. So this is just one tool that makes it easier to find some matchups. And for tonight, for the first game of the Thursday slate, which is this video is taken on Thursday, October 29th, it means Blake Griffin has a very good matchup against Dirk Nowitzki. Moving on to the next tool, and this is one of my favorite tools. I'm very glad we could share this with you at RotoCurve, and that's NBA game theory. With just 3 games on this slate, it's a little bit easier for me to describe this simply because I'll be able to discuss each game and what it means. The first game here, as you can see the day of the season. This is the 3rd day of the NBA season. There are 3 games listed today. Of course, was Dallas at the Clippers, the Hawks against the Knicks, and then Memphis against the Pacers. Now, next to this, you see the away pace and the home pace, and then the game pace plus or minus. And what this means is if teams have a higher than average pace combined between the two of them, it's a higher rated pace game. Now, what pace is in NBA is this is basically exactly what it sounds like. It's the pace of how the game flow goes. Normally, it means a team is going up and down the court faster. They're taking more shots, they're scoring more points, and that's one way to look at targeting for games. Usually we see the West Coast games, like there's no exception with the Clippers, score a lot more points, so you will see their game paces being rated higher. Now, when the Golden State Warriors are playing, you'll see that game pace is rated high as well. And if you've seen the Warriors play, their pace is one of the highest we've seen in basketball in a long time, so that makes sense. The next columns here are Vegas spread and the Vegas over-under. These are the spreads and the over-unders taken from the previous night before. Now, these do change, but the initial spread is what Vegas sets it at, and there has been high correlation based on the Vegas odds and the over-unders in all daily fantasy sports, not just basketball. But what this does is it gives you a rating, a plus or minus rating, which you see in Vegas here. And that means that the plus 1.6, which is a good game pace or a good game theory rating for Vegas, that means that this over under at 210 is very high. And the Clippers plus 11 or covering 11 is not a suggested thing for a boost, because if we get a game's a blowout, usually the starters come out. But if the game would be closer, like say this game, the Clippers were only favored by 2 and the over-under was still 210.5, this game would be a lot higher. This over-under plus minus would be a lot higher because in a closer game, starters are expected to play more, which means that you're going to start your guys a lot more as well. Now, after this column, you can see the home and away DVP rating. Now, what this is this is basically taking each team's overall DVP, which you saw on the previous thing, on the previous tool, ranked at each position. Now, what this means is the higher the number, this is based on a 100 scale, the easier it is for opponents to score on this team in terms of overall DVP. So Dallas tonight has an 84 DVP rating, which means a lot of the Clippers have favorable matchups based on the Dallas Mavericks DVP, which is defense first position. The next column is this game DVP plus minus, which this takes the average of the DVPs, which we just decided, plus or minus the average of all the DVPs in the NBA. So these top 2 games have a plus DVP rating, and this game has a minus. And if you remember from the last tool, Memphis and Indiana had 2 of the lowest DVPs, which means they're very good defensive teams. So that makes a lot of sense there, considering it's a low game DVP plus or minus rating. The last one is the game rating. This is basically all of this come together, and it gives you the top game for this particular slate would be Dallas against the Los Angeles Clippers at a plus 1.2. Now, of course, in every tool that we use for conditional formatting and everything like that, green is good. Green means those are the games we want to target, and red is bad. Those are the games you want to tend to stay away from. Moving on to the last but certainly not least tool, something that everybody needs, something you always need for all your lineups, regardless of the daily fantasy sport, but especially in NBA. And those are the bargain values. What we will see here is every site is going to have based on 5,000 or less on DraftKings, and it will also have their FanDuel salary as well. And these will detect these certain matchups, and it will explain what their usage percentage is, their DVP, and all things of that nature. So let's break this down real quick. Of course, you see the player, the position, their team, and the opponent, and then the DraftKings salary and FanDuel salary. It also shows their usage percentage, and what this is a rating based on their usage rate. So a player that shoots a lot and has a lot of the shots and a lot of the effective plays for their offensive team on the floor will have a positive rating. And as you can see, CJ Miles and Tim Hardaway both have high usage percentage ratings. And what this means is when these guys are on the floor, they shoot the ball often and they have their ball in their hands a lot. If you go over to DVP, this gives them, based on what the other tools we have just seen, an ability to use this, the DVP rating to determine a matchup. So ideally, if you see a high usage in the plus for green and DVP in the plus for green, and their overall rating at the end here being a 6.1, this makes them a top bargain play. Now, this will tie everything together, and for this certain game on Thursday, October 29th, you can see that Lance Stevenson, Wesley Johnson, and Wesley Matthews are the top bargain plays in terms of matchup, in terms of usage, and when they are on the floor. Now, this doesn't include minutes, which is something that will be tracked later or more and more as this thing goes on, as the season goes on. But this does have their production factored into it. And as everybody knows, usually minutes equals production for the most part, especially with shooters. Now, the last thing is you can see Josh's take. I will give my take on the top 5 players each day for value picks on this algorithm. So you will see based on what I feel, based on all of these numbers, and kind of take a look at a human spot of it, so you're not just only using the numbers. That basically wraps up the 3 tools we discussed. As you can see here, the NBA DVP and matchup detector, the game theory, and the bargain value. This video will be posted on each tool, so you can go on and use them. And if you need a refresher, you can just click on it and listen to my voice, kind of guide you the way through anything that you need to learn. Of course, if you have any questions, be sure to ask in the forums or in the chat. We'll try to get to you. Thanks for tuning in, and as always, give us a thumbs up and head over to RotoCurve for free everything, free tools, free analysis, and more stuff like this to make your daily fantasy one a more enjoyable one. Good luck, everybody.